What's up, guys? So this is my NATURIA Isuzu deck. So I've got two NATURIA builds. So this build is focused on abusing the Isuzu, and I think it's really, really good. NATURIA has a very, very effective one-card combo with Camellia, essentially, that lets you put out NATURIA Beast and potentially up to 2 negates of Sunflower. And because of that, I think it's great, this format. Also, the Isuzu cards happen to synergize quite well because both Kelbeck and Agido, when sent to the they mill, they can mill your Sacred Tree, which is a once per turn search. And then obviously Medora and Keldo, I feel like I butchered the names there, but Medora and Keldo can put that back so you can keep sending them in the same turn. So because of that, I think NATURIA actually is really, really, really good. Now, it does have some weaknesses. It struggles to out big monsters sometimes, and so that's why I've made certain choices in this deck that I'll go through. But yeah, I think it has a lot of potential this format. So to start off with, we've got our, we're maxing out on all of our Isuzus now. The reason being is because Agido is really, really good in this deck because it's Earth, so you can use it for things like NATURIA Beast. So that's why we actually played 3 Agido, even though, for example, that's probably the worst one out of all of them. Kelbeck is a hand trap, and then Medora and Keldo are both good because you want to shuffle your cards back, you want to shuffle the tier players' cards back, just everything really, really nice. Play the 1 Pankratops and 3 evenly in the main deck because, like I said, this deck struggles to outboards. That's the thing. It can make a good board, but it can't outboards effectively. All of your monsters are quite small, and so having these options in your main deck is nice. Pankratops is also great because obviously your Vernalizer can bring it up. Now, an alternative to this, for example, is, and I'm going to show you my other build as well, is you can play more Vernalizer cards, for example. So you can get rid of the Heralds, you get rid of the Evenlies, and then play more Vernalizers, and it would be a little bit better than this, I would think, in some respects. But I just do like this build because I do think the Isuzu cards are really, really, really strong, and I want to focus more on that build. So then we go into NATURIA cards. So Camellia is OP. Camellia is the circular for NATURIA. So what does Camellia do? Well, firstly, she's going to forge a card, which is going to be this, which is a Searcher. Then, if you attribute a monster to activate NATURIA card's effect, so that's like Sunflower's effect, that's like Vane's effect, that's like Mole Cricket's effect, instead of doing that, you can mill the top 2 cards of your deck. That's amazing. And then lastly, another good effect about her is that if your opponent special summons a monster, normal or special summons a monster, you can special summon a monster from your graveyard with this card's effect once per turn. So yeah, Camellia, really, really good card. You always want to see her, and your combos do revolve around her a lot. Stinkbug, I don't see it in every NATURIA build, but I do think Stinkbug's quite good just for the fact that NATURIA does struggle to out big monsters, like I said, and having a card that can just end the battle phase is great. A lot of times you're going to put out NATURIA Beast or whatever, and then, or not even that, you'll even put up a Sunflower or something, your opponent just wants to run over that. Well, in the battle phase, not in the battle phase, sorry, you bring out your Stinkbug, then during the battle phase, if they attack, Stinkbug's just going to end the battle phase, which is great. So yeah, I do think Stinkbug's actually really useful. Sunflower is great. Monster Negate. Now, another really, really funny thing about this card is it's a rank 2, which means you can play Sprite Elf in this deck and bring it back. So for example, what's going to happen on your opponent's turn is you're going to use this effect once. Camellia is going to mill 2. You can use it again because it's not once per turn. It's going to send itself in Camellia. Then if you have another NATURIA on the field, Sprite Elf is going to bring back Sunflower and negate again. So you have up to 3 negates with 1 Sunflower. I mean, that's cracked. So yeah, this card's really, really good for the format. Then we've got Herald. Herald is not a must, but if you're playing the big Isuzu package, I do think it's worth it just because you have a lot of advantages. You do have to take care though, because if you use the Vernalizers, you cannot use Herald after that. Vernalizers do lock you into Earth monster effects, so yeah, that's very important. Then we've got Vane. Vane is not as good because it negates spell and traps, and you've got a card that negates spells and a card that negates traps, but it does come up every now and again, so it's nice having that option for Vane. It's especially nice because Nat Beast doesn't negate Imperm, it doesn't negate traps, and so sometimes you put a Nat Beast plus a Vane if you know they have an Imperm, and now they can't even do that. It's also great because on your turn, if your opponent isn't seeing it coming, you normal summon your Camellia or whatever, use your Vernalizer, bring out a Vane, and now they can't even respond whatever their back row is, which is really, really good. Then you got Mole Cricket. Mole Cricket is very strong, so 2 great effects. Firstly, it can tribute itself to special summon up to 2 NATURIA monsters from the deck if your opponent has the monster with the highest attack, which they will a lot of the time because your monsters are pathetic. And then secondly, if your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, or if you special summon a NATURIA from the extra deck, it brings itself back from the grave, which is great. So yeah, 2 really, really good effects. Definitely love this card. Then after that, we've got the NATURIA spells and traps. So we've got Naturia Spring Breeze. So Naturia Spring Breeze is just a once per turn reborn. It's great. Its fusion effect isn't bad, but just exterior is just not that good of a card most of the time. Its effect's not that relevant, and so that effect doesn't really come up. But the fact that it can reborn and synchro on your opponent's turn is really, really good. Then we've got your Naturia Sacred Tree. Now, its field effect is not actually bad. Its field effect does come up occasionally. For example, like sometimes you'll use your Mulcritic's effect, it'll bring itself back, and then you can use to tribute that off. Or, for example, you'll use like a Camellia effect, they try and imperm, you tribute that off and you bring something else from the deck. So Sacred Tree does have a good on field effect, but the main thing is that searching capability. It's just so good, adding any Naturia card from the deck to the hand, and it's not even once per turn. I mean, amazing. Then in this variant, obviously, because we do have the big Ishizu package, we do play the 1 Exchange of the Spirit and the 1 Gravekeeper's Trap, just because it is nice to be able to lock off our opponent's graveyard like that. So then moving into the extra deck, we've got Linkuriboh. Linkuriboh is for 2 reasons. Firstly, your Mole Cricket and your Vayne and stuff, sometimes you want to get these in the graveyard so you can revive them with Analyzer. But also because this deck, like I said, again, tiny monsters, it's nice having a card that just basically says no to 1 attack. Sprite Elf, mainly its synergy is Sunflower. That's the only real reason that you play that card. Remember, these cards, you can't use them the same time you use a Analyzer. So you can summon them, but you can't use their effects. Then we've got the Cerberus. We only play Cerberus because outing monsters is nice in this deck, and because it's Earth. Also, again, great. Luster Soldier is a very nice monster to have access to in this deck. A lot of times that's the boss monster you're going to go into, and it just got recently reprinted as well, which is great. Underworld Goddess does outbig untargetable threats that this deck sometimes will struggle with. Dweller and Bagooska are both great monsters. Dweller's great because you make Dweller, and even if you can't use it in your turn, which a lot of times you don't need to, goes back to your opponent, now use your Dweller, and your opponent's completely destroyed because they can't activate spells, they can't use their graveyard. I mean, how are they even playing? Bagooska, great in this deck, and what's nice is the Vernalizers can bring back Bagooska, so you can kind of lock your opponent for a turn, which is really, really great because it will pop itself when it comes back to your turn, which is just awesome. Utopia and Utopia the Lightning are great. Some people play Prime as well, so you can get full material, a full material Zeus if you want, but really and truly, it never really comes up. Between all of these cards, I rarely have a problem with big monsters. Then you've got your Nat Beast and your Barkian. Barkian doesn't come up that much, but you do destroy trap decks if it does get on the field. Beast is good, however, Super Poly, Dark Ruler, Ultimate Slayer, cards like these it can't respond to, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's still a really, really good card, and that's going to be part of your main end board. Trishula you make on your opponent's turn using Spring Breeze, because obviously it just requires, Trishula just requires 1 tuner and 2 non-tuners, so a lot of times on your opponent's turn, for example, you're going to bring out a Trishula and now you get to get rid of 3 cards. And M-Punch, it's nice just to have a big boss monster that your opponent can't deal with. Now the side deck is a bit weird, but it's just a couple of options that you have. So Gozen Match is good in this deck because you do mainly play Earths, Dark Ruler and Lightning Storm just to outboards. And then Rose Whip is a nice option. Now the thing about Rose Whip is that it only lets them activate 1 spell and trap, and sometimes that's enough, which is my problem with it. But if you have Rose Whip and Nat Beast, for example, amazing. Then Barrier Statue of the Droughts goes quite well with the Vernalizers, very easy to bring out. Bamboo Shoot is a really good card, however specific combos need it. If you're playing a more Vernalizer focused Naturia build, then I would definitely recommend playing Bamboo Shoot, otherwise no. Morphage Goliath, similar, you want a more Vernalizer focused build. And then Lava Golem, you don't need your Null Summon hugely in this deck, so Lava Golem's another good option. So guys, 1 second, and now I'm going to quickly show you a more Vernalizer focused variant of this build. So guys, this is a more Vernalizer focused variant of this build with a couple of different cards, and as you can see, it really just takes advantage of the fact that the Vernalizer cards have huge synergy with Naturias. So what are the couple of new cards? We've got Vera. Vera is an incredible boss monster, and I definitely think that she has a lot of potential. We just haven't got an archetype that synergizes amazingly well with Vernalizers, and Vernalizers themselves need a little bit more support to actually be relevant. But essentially, so once per turn, if your opponent activates a monster effect and you control 5 or more Earth monsters, you can negate that effect on resolution and destroy this card. Now the reason why this effect is so good is because it doesn't activate and it negates on resolution. So that means 2 things. Firstly, your opponent can't negate this, they can't Baron it or anything like that. The monster Vera has to already be negated for them to stop this. Secondly, it means your opponent can't chain block against you. So the way it will work is, for example, Chain Link 1, your opponent activates Havnish. Chain Link 2, they activate Shirin. Chain Link 3, they activate, what's the last one called? Well, Rhino Heart. What's going to happen is, as the chain is resolving backwards, Rhino Heart will trigger, then Shirin will trigger, and when Shirin triggers here, you can negate with Vera because her effect doesn't activate and it does say when it resolves. So you can negate there, it can't be chain blocked, and then obviously chain link can resolve as well. So that effect is really nice, and if you have 2 Veras, you get it twice because that effect is once per turn. It's not a hard once per turn, which means if you have 2 copies, you get 2 negates. So yeah, really, really good. Then also on your opponent's turn, it can special summon an Earth monster from your graveyard as a quick effect. That's great. Bring back all your Naturias, which is nice. And then also it can take control of one monster your opponent controls on their turn. So that's really, really, really amazing. Then we've got Naturia Antjaw. Antjaw is just a nice card. It continually summons Naturias from deck, which is great. And like I said, this synergizes well with Vera because you can bring Vera, then Vera can bring out Antjaw, then Antjaw can bring out Mole Cricket, then Mole Cricket can bring out more, and it's just this kind of cascading levels of summons, which is great. We've got Rose Whip here, which is nice. So yeah, just in general, this is a more Vernalizer balanced Naturia build. The idea is still Naturias, but as you can see, the issues go down by quite a lot. We get rid of Exchange of the Spirit and we focus more on bullying our opponent out with those Vernalizer and Naturia cards. So guys, that is my Naturia deck profile for now. I'll definitely have some videos and drills of this deck in the future, but yeah, I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.